Welcome, Hearties, to the Hearties Hotline, your connection to Hope Valley. We are so excited to bring you this connection today. We've got a treat for you. He's got a real connection in with the higher ups of the government. At least that's how he plays it. But we would like to meet the man behind the connection, Mr. Erik Gow. Hi, Erik.
Hi, Hearties.
Erik. Welcome.
We wanted to hear what was going on because I'm sure that you noticed that there was a lot of speculation surrounding Edwin. And so we wanted to hear it from the man himself. What did he have to say? And what's all of this according to Edwin's perspective and how you created the character and all that fun stuff?
Absolutely. All too happy to just settle out because what is it? There's the different perspectives. There's one, two, and then the truth is somewhere in the middle. So I'm sure we'll get there.
We'll find it. We'll find it.
We'll find it. It's somewhere. Oh, goodness. Well, to get started, like when you first got hired on One Calls the Heart, what all did you know about Edwin Mitchell?
I knew very little about Edwin Mitchell. It was nice to be the single episode, the little story arc with the kids and being a persnickety tourist, enjoying the hot springs. That was all I had, was just the dialogue that was on the page, no future plans or things like that. So it was a bit of one of those auditions where it's like, okay, this is the general idea. Do what you will with it.
Mm-hmm. So you knew nothing about the government connection when you, oh my gosh.
None whatsoever. I was also new to the show at that point. I think I quickly watched a few episodes before taping the audition, and then I had watched season 9 before heading to set.
Okay.
Just to get an idea of like, okay, what's going on here? Actually, that's a lie. I think I watched a few episodes before because I had an audition for a one-off Mountie as well. I think like a month or two before the Edwin audition.
Oh,
yeah. So I was a little bit familiar with the show just in terms of the tone and how it works. And then, yes, once I was cast, I did a bit of a deep dive.
That makes sense. So you didn't know about his connection to the governor.
Because all of a sudden, Mr. Mitchell, the tourist who kept kicking the kids out of the hot springs, is what? He knows the governor? What's that about?
I was surprised when I got the email to come back. I was surprised by that as well. I was like, oh, is there going to be more hot springs? And then reading this governmental sort of B plot for the season with Lucas, it was like, oh, okay, that's what's going on. Which was delightful. But it's funny that is the joys of episodic television for all the characters. We're constantly, as the scripts are coming through, being like, okay, oh, okay, that's and it's like improv that way. It's like that sort of yes and philosophy where it's like, oh, I do all my homework from my character, and there's like, oh, well, now I'm a government worker. Okay, yes, I work for the government now. That's how we're proceeding.
And my entire backstory has now flip-flopped to here.
Oh, but it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Well, with it being a period piece, you had a lot of great costumes. How did you feel about the very fashionable swimsuit?
The very fashionable swimsuit was better than the fashionable swimsuit that I had in my audition. So I've also worked with Barbara in the past. So I love working with Barbara. And what was it? I had I think it was like a Halloween costume from years ago. It was like this almost like WrestleMania kind of spandex onesie thing. And I wore that for the audition. So I do have a self-tape that exists with that.
How can we get that on the internet?
Well, I don't know if it's one of those, this is now property of Hallmark. So it may just have to stay in the Hallmark vaults for now.
Darn, right?
But otherwise, I remember because when I did the audition for it's the Mountie who drops off Scout. I had an audition for that like a month or two before. And what often happens with auditions is actors have their like audition wardrobes. And sometimes, so my partner, she had big red winter jackets, and I don't have any red jackets. So I took that. So I'm wearing this like very trim women's sort of red jacket. It's like, that's the closest thing I have to a red suit. My dad's on the island. He's an ex-Mountie, but I was like, well, I can't get that fast enough. And then even the other day, I think I borrowed, she has like a big yellow, I was auditioning for like a singing banana because that is the business. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
the constantly going through. There's certain wardrobe items in my closet where it's like this is only for auditions, and that is what that exists. Otherwise, they don't see the light of day.
Right.
So we were checking out your IMDb, and this is your first period piece that you've been in.
First period piece on camera, definitely. Yes.
Yeah, that's always awesome. It's one of those milestones. So speaking of acting, so I've been in scenes where what I'm supposed to portray is the exact opposite. So I gotta know, was that water actually tolerable, or were you just that good of an actor? Did you get in and it
Well,
was freezing or
obviously, I'm that good of
scalding?
an actor. Uh, but what I will say is it was better than I was anticipating, because there's always those days where you read on the call sheet where it's like, oh, it's a rain scene for like an entire day. It's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna spend 10 hours out in the rain, and or it's the hardest is when you're doing the Hallmark films and it's the Christmas ones in the summer and you're wearing all the jackets and things, and it's like, I am dying. I know it was during the Heat Dome 2 years ago. I was doing a movie of the week, and it was a Christmas film, and we were in a plane, and it was like in the plane in our winter jackets, and it was just so warm. So I will say, comparably, it was delightful. I mean, also one of my favorite things is I do like hot springs and those sort of like spa type. There's one in Whistler, which is outside of Vancouver, called Scandinave, and it's all those sort of like cold plunges and heated pools and hammocks and things. So when it's that like, oh, what do I draw on this? I'm like, my favorite place in the world, this little spa up in the mountains. It's like, yep, that is the Hope Valley equivalent right here.
Wow, you were made for this role, weren't you?
Yes. And I will say they did heat them. Not like hot tub hot, but they
Yeah.
had actually, it was amazing. It's because it's out on the farm, and they had like dug out these sort of like little trenched pools, and they had all the rocks and things. And then they have the greens department who brings in all sort of like, they bring in trees even though we're surrounded by trees, and they just make it look incredible.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Well, then when you ended up moving into season 11, how much was that still an episode by episode reveal of what you were playing? Were you told to be
Episode by
suspicious?
episode. No, was never told to be suspicious. I think just naturally the character lends himself to suspicion. I mean, it's one of the things I love about the character. In terms of, I'm always so fascinated, because although it's my first period piece in terms of on camera, I've always done tons of Shakespeare and Oscar Wilde and sort of old Jacobean plays and things like that.
Sure.
And uh, so it's that double delight of both something that's period, but also you have so much politics. Like I love the history plays of Shakespeare. And what I always
Right.
find fascinating is not the character like the Richard the Thirds or the Othellos and like those sort of like scheming characters, who are kind of masterminding things, but those people who are close to power, and it's like, who don't want it for themselves, or they're not pursuing it, or even if they did, it's like, what is holding you back that you're not running for governor or that you're not doing these things? So
Right.
finding those, I don't even know if suspicious is the right word, but just unpleasant personality traits that keeps this person from actually being in the spotlight, but they have skills that lend themselves well to politics. So I think the suspicion that arises from that is absolutely warranted.
So that must be hard to play when you don't know if you actually are involved in the conspiracy or not.
I mean, there would be times when I would read, because I get the scripts and I read them through, and I do all my sort of like table work at home. And it's because the other amazing thing about film is we don't get those table reads and the rehearsals and the chatting. And usually when you arrive on set, the director's talking with 3 different departments. So you just jump in and you make these offers, which again, it's so much like improv in that sense of,
Oh yeah.
even when you're actually shooting the piece, it's like you might get an offer from the director, like, okay, do this for the scene. It's like, okay, yeah, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, let's absolutely jump in. When I was reading through the script, there would be times where I was like, oh, am I on the up and up? Like, who am I? Like, and then there's Montague, and then there's these things. And there are points where I would always wonder, it's like, did I shoot Luca? Like, who did this? So there would be coming on the set and there would be like leaving little windows for them. Like, I don't know what direction they'll take, but if it's there, like, let's leave some opportunities. But there was also very fun moments where, like, I know at one point I was operating the radio. Now that Fiona's left and it's someone has to operate the radio, but like there was like almost like a little bit of sort of like clowning Lotsy type stuff there. And it's like, oh, well, at times it's a very silly character, at times it's a very serious character, and it's just adapting to whichever situation comes up. In summation, it's the delightful, because there's so many new things coming up, it forces you to create a very rounded character where it's like, oh, well, I'm silly in this. Okay, so what makes me silly? Oh, I'm very serious here. Oh, what makes me serious? And creating just a more fleshed out person. Whereas I know a lot of time the instinct is like, I'm the bad guy, so I am going to be a bad guy, or I am a good, or I'm an ingenue, or whatever those archetypes are. So it creates this really fun full picture as opposed to something much more narrow.
That
Man,
makes sense.
You're all over the place, weren't you? Did you watch how it all turned out?
Yeah, I mean, so absolutely divulging, like my partner and I, so for when I was shooting season 10, I had watched season 9, and then I think it was the break in between. And then when I was asked to come back, we were both like, oh, I guess let's do it. And we binged the entire series from start to finish. Like just as I was starting to film season 11, moving and then like the first couple blocks we were just like catching up. And so my partner Laura, she's now like a very big Hearties fan. She loves the show. We both watch it every week. We're so excited. We've been watching, we subscribed to whichever package it was so we could watch them all live for this season and watching it. And she definitely has her storylines and her characters that are the favorites. But in terms of me watching my own performance, it's that funny thing as an actor where it's hard to watch it objectively. I'm not always the biggest. I like it, like I do teaching, so I like watching it for educational purposes. And I'm like, okay, so that's what. Oh, okay, well that works. Oh, that doesn't. So we'll do more of this. Like it's very like when you're in the kitchen tasting things, being like, oh, well that's how it turned out. Oh, this is what we'll do next time.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing is because I know what's going to happen. I'm just watching my partner and like seeing like, oh, you got that? Okay. Oh, what are you gonna do? Oh yeah, that's because I don't give her any spoilers, and you know we're all sworn to secrecy
Of course.
during our
Of
filming.
course.
So it's that, or every once in a while I'll drop a little bit of just false information and be like, I think the whole season I was like, I did it. I shot Lucas. And I would just like, she's like, no, you didn't. I'm like, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. We'll just have to find out. So she was very suspicious of me for the whole season. She just being like, are you involved in that? I'm like, I don't know. Can't tell you. I definitely didn't know while filming, but by the time we wrap the shooting, we have a good break while they're doing all the post-production.
Right.
So
Yeah. So you knew.
we're sitting on the information, but tons of fun to watch it with Laura and
Oh my gosh.
get to
That's
live
amazing.
vicariously through her.
Well, knowing now that he was not the shooter,
Yes.
how do you think he would have reacted if he had been invited into that conspiracy as a mole?
I don't think that's his jam. Like, as I think Edwin is a very political animal, and it's that interesting. I mean, I think my favorite character arc on the show, starting season 1 to now, like I always, uh, oh, I'm also terrible at names, but so I'm totally blanking.
We'll help you. Just tell us who you're thinking
The
of.
original big bad of Hope Valley.
Henry Gowan.
Thank you, Henry Gowan. It's that because I loved watching the arc as the seasons would go, and you can see their point of view on things. Because the thing I love about characters who sort of are in that moral gray area is like, well, how do they justify things? Because no one goes like, I'm going to do bad things. Everyone thinks like, oh, well, this is going to be for some greater good, whether it's my own, my family's, whoever it is, or society as a whole. with Edwin, I think it's that, well, he aligns himself with Lucas because Lucas is the best person for the job. And there's that terrible thing with politics where there's an entire game there that I think Lucas is not necessarily equipped for, where it's like someone has to do this stuff. Like these are the things that like don't do that because you're not, that's not you. But I'll do that because then you get to do these good things. So I don't think he's a person who's motivated by money or that sort of like power, like, hey, come into this sinister plot and these are the things you get out of it. Because I like to think there is that ultimate goal of that greater good, civil service. Whereas I think if there was some time in Edwin's youth where, like, I don't know, he maybe ran for a student president or something like that, like, oh, people do not like me, liked the idea of Edwin being a terrible public speaker. So even I think there was one scene where I was out on the gazebo in the town and like trying to read things where it's like, nope, in a debate, he'd be done. No. Behind the scenes, yes. So I think he wouldn't, I don't think there's a malicious side to him. It's just that very, very pragmatic, like, well, this is just how you have to do that thing. And if you have to do that thing, we're gonna do it. So I think there's
Yeah.
definitely a drawing the line at murder plots. Or I also appreciated at the end of season 10 that when I found out about the water plot, it was like that, what? No, like that's not all
Bad
right.
Governor Balfour.
Yes. It's yeah, but again, it's what I love about that character where he's been on both sides of this now. Where it's like, oh, you're close to these bad things, but then it's also, oh, but these are good things. But and I'll even say in that sort of like altruistic sense of the show is I love that idea of Hope Valley as a place where people go and they are led by example. So as opposed to a show where like Edwin needs to have these terrible things happen. Like, oh, I've learned the lesson and maybe there's not the opportunity to grow. But instead you see people who are doing the right thing and it almost pushes you in this direction of like, oh, well, I guess you can do it the right way and it works out, which if there's a lesson that Edwin learns from his time in Hope Valley, I'd hope it would be something like that, where it'd be like, oh, yeah, we didn't do the resort. We didn't do the underhand thing. We didn't have to do the things that would put the town or its people at risk, but things work out.
So where do you see Edwin going now?
Oh, in my brain, and what I would love to see is whether we see it or not, just rock bottom. I think he would be just like but in that most delightful way. Like I love comedy, and for me, the most comical thing is that someone who's very high status and then just has to drop. And what I like about those ideas of political careers, and they talk about it in show business as well, is like, well, be nice to everyone on the way up because they're going to be the same people on the way down. I don't think Edwin would have heeded that advice. So I think it would be quite delightful to see him on the way down. And all of those instances where like, oh, he, learning, I think there's a great deal of humility to be learned for that character. And I think starting again at the bottom, but having these now good examples of how to be would be a nice little arc there.
That's definitely something to explore. That would be really interesting if they brought that back in season 12.
Yeah. Again, these are things that I don't know. I play it day by day.
What was your favorite scene to film in season 10 and season 11?
Oh, favorite scene to film. Um, the Easter egg hunt was a lot of fun. The whole section there. I think as well, Chris doing the speech on the radio and getting to that. Those were a lot of fun to shoot, but I would say my favorite was getting to do the scenes with Martin doing the Gowan interactions because it's such a fun pairing of someone who is now so far on the other side of things and can be like, nope, I see exactly who you are. Don't do that. And of course, Edwin is oblivious to any other way of doing things. As well, I didn't get to have any interactions with Martin in the prior season. And this one, oh, just a delight to work with. It was a ton of fun.
So if Edwin ever did go back to Hope Valley, would he show his face to Gowan again? I don't know if he'd be brave enough.
Oh, that's an excellent question. Well, I like to imagine if the Hope Valley Hot Springs has any type of subscription service, like that would definitely keep Edwin going back. And just like his happy place. Like if anyone needs a relaxing day, that guy probably just needs to learn to relax.
Oh yeah.
Now, in terms of, I would love any interactions with Henry because I think, again, just having to go through that humility would be such a delight to act, but also I think fun to see, especially that Henry has really earned that position and being such a trustworthy person to throw a person like Edwin into the mix there, I think is just lots of interest would happen.
Yeah, I can just see it. I'm back. Oh, there's Henry.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, fake mustache over the mustache would be probably the look. Incognito.
Now that would be a look to see. Wow.
Yes. Yes, right now I'm very scruffy. I have a couple other things I'm shooting right now, but this would probably be the look of rock bottom Edwin.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I know I can get behind that. So we hear that you are a singer and a composer. How true is that statement?
That is very true. I was before I settled into acting, was most of my focus was in music. In fact, I studied a lot of classical voice and then kind of moved into musical theater, which then moved into stage work. And I did that for a good, I'd say, 10 years before moving over to film and television. And yeah, even still, I do a lot of composing. There's a few children's theater companies that I work with and they tour, and I've done music for that. I've written a few musicals. I've had plays in development, and even recently shot a pilot that I wrote, and we just had a crew, and we sort of did a spec pilot for that recently, and that was a ton of fun.
Wow.
So, and I'm sure, as you know, in the acting world, you kind of have to do like all the different things.
Wear all the hats.
All of the hats. Excellent hat, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. This is kind of my signature look. I always wear the hat. This was not on the list, but I gotta know, what's your favorite musical?
Oh, I always have to say, what's my favorite musical right now? Because there's so
Yeah, fair
many
enough.
good
Fair
ones. Ooh. I mean, the one I probably listen to the most right now, and there's a production in town that's going to be coming up next summer. So I think that's why I've been listening to a lot lately is Waitress.
I don't know that one.
I've been listening to a lot of Waitress. Sarah Bareilles wrote a musical, or she did the music for it. It's based on the film from, I want to say, the early-ish 2000s.
Okay.
That's great. Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. I could listen to that all day. Sondheim all the time.
Sondheim.
Be More Chill. I haven't had a chance to listen to because I know the Tonys just happened, and I feel like such a bad musical theater nerd that I didn't watch them. I feel like out of the loop more in terms of like a lot of the newer ones that have been going on. But I also love sort of golden age, like Rodgers and Hammerstein. And oh, actually, the one that I really like is the new Broadway cast recording of Oklahoma, where they have like all the sort of like folk instruments, and they have like the violins and the banjos and all, and it's done very sort of country western style.
Nice.
Great recording. I would highly recommend that one. Oh, and I was working with my students the other day. We were learning about fugues in our music theory class. So we were listening to some Guys and Dolls, the Fugue for Tin Horns opening, which is just tons of fun.
Luck be a lady too.
Oh, they're doing a production in Vancouver right now. I'm going with my partner's parents for their anniversary tomorrow. But yeah, I went to the opening of that and it was such a lovely production. I think they close soon. Otherwise, I would totally plug that. But if you're in a town anywhere, go see musicals because they're great.
Oh my God.
You're speaking Cammie's language.
Yes, yes, you are. Musical theater is my jam.
Do you have a favorite or like era or?
I have a million favorites like you. I love Wicked. I
Yes.
love Wicked. It is just so clever and quick, and then of course I love the classics. Sound of Music, West Side Story. Did you see the new
Yes.
film that Steven Spielberg
I
did of
did
West
see
Side?
the new film.
I
Oh, it's
loved
lovely.
it. I didn't think I would
Yeah.
like it as much. I was afraid of what they would do to it, but I loved
Mhm.
it. So, yeah, huge
It's
musical theater nerd. I like you. I'm not quite up on all of the new ones, so I feel, a little ashamed. I'm more of the classic ones, but I love musical theater. It's what I sing all the time. So
Oh, it's what I'm constantly playing in my car, and singing along to.
my children say, "Mom, no, no, don't, please don't. You're gonna belt it out, and we're in the car, and it's gonna be loud."
Yeah, just wait till the Wicked movie comes out. I'm sure they won't hear the end of it.
So, what part do you sing? What's your voice part?
It's changed over the years.
Oh yeah.
When I was doing classical, I started out kind of as a higher baritone, so sort of like in that sort of like Mozart repertoire and sort of like Schubert and all that sort of lighter stuff. And then in musical theater, it's so funny because it's kind of like film where there's certain roles at certain ages you play where just style and technique wise, like usually sort of like mid tenorish, kind of like that sort of baritonery kind of area there is where I
In
settle and do
between.
a lot of work. Yeah, that's sort of in between. Generally double down on the singing. It's the dancing that I always had to work at. Where so I always loved the classical musical theater shows where they're almost designed to be like you can just stand while everyone dances around you. Always love a good musical where they're like very story and song based. Yeah, need to get back in dance classes.
I hear you on that one. Ugh, dancing's my weak point with that one. So when you compose, what's your composition strategy? In writing, Sarah and I are actually working on a novel together. So the terms that they use are planners and pantsers. So
What are
when you're,
pantsers?
yeah, just going by the seat of your pants.
Oh,
And
okay. Yeah.
so when you are writing your music, do you get inspired and then, oh, I gotta go lock myself away for a couple of days and just write it all out, like Handel writing out the Messiah, and you just can't
Oh,
stop?
handing out to the violinist and the ink's still wet. Yeah. Yes and
or,
no.
or do you say, okay, I have to work on this, and you kind of just go and make yourself work, and you're more of a planner?
Oh, it's so interesting. I feel like I will borrow from different categories. It's always interesting. For me, the most inspiring thing is a deadline. Because I love the research phase, even in terms of acting, where God, even when I started looking at like the Edwin role, there was like looking like, oh, what kind of person? He's like, oh, he's very pragmatic. Oh, what is the pragmatic, like pragmatism? Like, what was that? When did that philosophical idea come up? And like going down these like Wikipedia rabbit holes. So what I'm doing music, it's like, oh, well, the show kind of lives in that world, and like, oh, let's listen to these composers, and like, who did they listen to? And that it's like, oh, and this show from this year did that, and like, can we bore? So I love research. Oh man, and the moment anything's based on an actual event or person, I could spend months doing that. Um, but in terms of flying by the seat of the pants, that's definitely because then the deadline comes close. Because I always find no matter how long I have, like if I'm commissioned to do something, it's that, oh, I have tons of time, but the bulk of the writing and the creation is like the weeks before, where it's like, oh no, this has to get done. Which I would say, to its credit, all that research and stuff, it still exists, and it's important that that was done. But I definitely need the adrenaline and fear to put it down onto the page.
There
Uh,
is something about being okay. You have, like you said, the adrenaline, and it has to be
yeah.
done by this time. There's something
Mhm.
very real about that.
Well, I feel like I'm a very people-pleasing personality, so there's that like I can't let anyone down.
Mhm.
This has to get done. So a lot of the time when I do composing now, I have arrangers. that I'll work with and sort of do that, because there's almost this tricky thing, and especially coming from the theater world where there's very little funding, is that like, oh, I have to do everything. I have to be the lyricist, I have to be the composer, I have to be the playwright, I got to write the book, I got to do these things. So it's that really recognizing when to reach out and be like, hey, would you do this part? Or hey, where can we sort of divide things up? Which I think is a lot easier when you have those sort of like workshops and things. But yeah, a good collaborator. And if I look for a good collaborator, I generally tend to find an organized one, because that's sometimes something I lack a little bit. A little bit. Yeah.
Self-awareness is good. That's
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, in this pairing right here, Sarah,
Yeah.
she's fabulous at research. I stink at it. So she does the research, all of the research and the skeleton stuff, and then I go in and add little stuff. And yeah, it works great.
So that's a good duo, and that's the amazing. No one needs to be the best at all the things. But yeah, find your complementary person. That's the ticket.
Oh yeah. All right. So hard one. If you had to pick acting or music, what would it be?
Oh, I would pick acting. I just love doing it. And I mean, there's the part of me in that very sort of heady way. Like even music, like it's just storytelling. It's just a different means of storytelling.
Yeah.
And what I love about acting is there's an accessibility to it for a lot of people. Whereas, although I feel like music is such a universal and like everybody makes music, all cultures do music. There's something where acting can sometimes feel like just a more stripped down version of it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's me too. I love acting. It's just amazing. It's just so much fun.
Oh my goodness. Well, speaking of hats, Cammie's gonna laugh at this. We were really thrilled this season with the whole mystery of who shot Lucas and having a murder board on When Calls the Heart. I'm a huge mystery buff, so every week when we would discuss the mystery on When Calls the Heart, I would get out a little prop for our podcast here. So this is my hat that I wear on the podcast. And so what we're going to do is just a little segment that we do sometimes with mystery guests on our show, and it's called Mystery Team Beat. And we're just going to kind of do some rapid fire questions to see your preference on a few different mystery related things.
Fantastic.
So the first one would be, do you prefer contemporary or period pieces?
With mysteries.
With mysteries.
Period mysteries. I mean, mysteries where cell phones exist, I find, and I've done this where like you'll work on certain pieces, and when you're doing dramaturgy and things, quite often the first question is like, how do we get people away from their cell phones in this story?
Right.
So the class, there's just so much more room for mystery, and I love where like detectives figure things out and figure people out. And the moment you get very technical and scientific and forensic, I go like, it's almost science fiction at that point where it's about the technology. Whereas I love a good sort of psychological detective piece.
That makes sense. It's a whole different ballgame.
Perry Mason or Sherlock Holmes?
Sherlock Holmes.
Would you rather play the murderer or the detective?
I said both. Just big twist in the plot where the killer was the detective. I mean, that sort of like Moriarty type character always seems very fun. I like that. Yeah. No, but my personality, it would bring me back. I like the detective. I like that solving the puzzle and being the person to piece it out and put it together, as opposed to the one who orchestrated the evil deed.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite setting for a mystery? So are you more of a forest guy or a mansion guy, or what would be your favorite setting?
Ooh, I mean, there's something about that mansion. Mansion. Why? It's a mystery.
Well, I think I heard part of the next question
Oh,
in your answers. Agatha Christie or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle?
Agatha Christie. It's more the
Oh,
psychological, less of the yeah, I'm gonna say Agatha Christie.
okay. Because a lot of her stuff takes place in places like mansions, and that's why you like the
Yeah,
mansion.
like that whole sort of like Murder on the Nile kind of thing, and the yeah, I'm gonna say that. I mean, I do love Sherlock, that BBC, but yeah, I'm gonna say Agatha Christie today.
Okay, so last one. If you were portraying a detective, which you said is what you would rather do, who would be your victim, your murderer, and your Watson? Who would you
Ooh,
cast?
like, is this like actors, actual
Anybody.
people? Like, I'm oh,
Yeah,
okay.
any actual actor.
I'm gonna I'm gonna turn it around a tiny little bit.
Ooh.
I would want to be the Watson to Mark
Oh,
Rylance. I feel like that would be an interesting Sherlock. And plus, I just think he's great.
who would you
Um,
have?
Mark Rylance.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
He's a British stage actor.
Okay.
He does film and TV. Ooh. And then so there's that. Also, I
Murderer
think
and the
Watson. I
victim.
love Watson. Watson's great. The murderer.
You'd be a
Who
The
would be the
murderer and
murderer?
the victim. Who would you cast?
Who would I cast? Ooh. Actually, okay, I'm gonna turn this around. I'm gonna change it again. I want to just one calls the heart theme this. I would Watson to Chris's Sherlock. Um, I think that would be great. Because I think they would play an interesting murder. I'm gonna say Rothgar.
Ooh.
Yeah, but not Ned. Rothgar. Rothgar would
Not
be
Ned, but Rothgar. Okay,
Rothgar. He's
very.
very wily. He's very and also he's very funny. So I feel like he'd be very creative about it.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And then the victim. Oh no, now I have to choose one else the victim. I did not think this out. Um, oh, can't they just be missing? Maybe they're just missing. Who
Here,
would?
I'll do it. I'll play dead for you.
Oh, thank you. What a what a mean question. Oh, is there? I'm trying to think. Is like, is there anyone? Are there any mysterious disappearances that have happened on When Calls the Heart? I'm trying to think back to seasons.
Yeah,
Um,
there have been a few quick getaways.
quick getaways.
Mhm.
Oh, what was it? What is it? Wesley?
Ooh, Wesley played
Mm,
Lots of
yeah.
enemies.
Oh,
yes.
yeah. What
Yeah,
Wesley, as far as the character
Walden, yeah,
goes,
Walden
yeah.
Wyman. Ooh,
yeah, Walden Wyman. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he
Is
played
it Wesley who played?
yeah,
Wesley
Wesley
played
was
Oh,
there.
Walden
yes.
Wyman.
Who's
Yeah.
an absolute deer in real life.
Yes,
So yes,
but what a weasel. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, he does it. He does it very well.
Yeah, the character was a total weasel.
I mean, or Montague, I'd say.
Benjamin Wilkinson. I mean,
Benjamin, who's my neighbor. He lives down the street.
oh my goodness.
Yep. We'll carpool to set sometimes.
That's awesome.
So you know what? Ben would be fun to work with, and he lives
Ben would
close.
be,
We could work it out. I wouldn't
Well,
have to
and
commute
he's
far to the crime
been,
scene.
what was that?
he's
Yeah.
been in so many mysteries.
He's been in so many mysteries. Mysterious man.
Yes.
Yeah. Shout out to Ben.
Okay.
Montague, who almost, he definitely did get roughed up this last season.
Yeah. You should have seen us when we were recapping. We're like, wait a minute, Montague's not involved in the shooting? Wait, what? We
Yeah.
had fun with that one. All right. Well, Erik, thank you so much for giving us your
Thank
time.
you.
This
Yeah,
was so
no, it was
much fun.
absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And yeah, big shout out to all the Hearties watching. And thank you for tuning into the show and tuning into the podcast. It's such a delight.
So, is there any social media you'd like to share so people can follow you?
Ooh, I have an Instagram account. It's going to show how active I am on it because I can't think of my Instagram handle. I like to see what everybody else is doing. I rarely post, but usually it's my dog. So if you want to see pictures of Olivia, I think it's Gowser with a Z 675
Okay.
because yeah, I want to say that's it. And there's some good dog content on there occasionally when I remember.
What's her
Um,
breed?
Oh, she's a lab pointer mix.
Oh,
Yeah, she's very sweet. She's inside right now.
probably better.
Otherwise, she would be just like right here the whole time, coming, visiting, saying hello.
I know. I'm
Oh,
surprised my cats didn't come and climb across my computer while we were talking.
Yeah, because I watched, was it Loretta's interview where she had her dog visit? And
yes,
I
she
saw that and I
did.
was like, oh, dog. I love when dogs come in on Zoom calls. It always makes the meetings much more
It's
more
fun.
bright. Yeah.
All right, Hearties, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you had as much fun as we did, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.